Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Matt Valier. I'm the Executive Director of the Patients' Rights Action Fund. I'm a Massachusetts native from Worcester and a call volunteer EMS first responder in Central Massachusetts. I'll be your host today. For the benefit of some of our friends with disabilities, I'm a early 40s man of color, dark wavy hair, clean shaven, olive complexion, wearing a purple checked button-down shirt and a charcoal blazer in front of a white background. Our broken medical system is driven by a profits before people structure. People are not getting the care they deserve, and choices are often artificially limited by financially motivated players. Too often, medical professionals and society on the whole view the lives of people with disabilities and older adults as less worth living, less worthy of care, scarce medical resources and healthcare dollars, better off dead. We have some experts here for you today and people with personal experiences who provide our position in opposition to the twin assisted suicide bills in the Massachusetts legislature, H2446 and S1331. They'll having a hearing on this bill tomorrow. So first we have Ellen Lee. She's a disability rights advocate with United Spinal Association who lives with spinal cord disorder and uses a power wheelchair. She opposes assisted suicide in her efforts to overcome health inequities and medical bias. Ellen volunteers with Second Thoughts Massachusetts as she recognizes assisted suicide as a deadly form of discrimination against disabled people. Stephanie Packer is a Latina Californian mother of 7. In 2012, she was diagnosed with scleroderma and given 3 years to live. She's alive today to tell her story. Jackie Beaver will hopefully also be joining us. Jackie's daughter, Sean, struggled with severe depression and social anxiety before tragically taking her own life at the age of 25 using a drug cocktail published online by proponents of assisted suicide laws. She now fights assisted suicide proponent organizations that glamorize assisted suicide and completely ignore media recommendations for content that mentions people taking their own lives in hopes to save other young people from copycat suicides. Lynette Grand is a wife, mother, teacher, and a survivor of stomach cancer who was given a 10% chance to live. After enduring chemotherapy and radiation, she made the decision to end treatment, not wish to die. After receiving information about an energy healing option and becoming stronger and healthier, she has now survived nearly 30 years past her terminal diagnosis. I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. We'll take all questions via the Q&A function. So if you move your cursor around, the toolbar at the bottom comes up and there are 2 bubbles with Q&A underneath them. If you click on that, you can ask questions in that function. Please, your ID, please list your name, the media outlet, and first, if your question's for a specific panelist, please indicate that. For any further media requests, please contact Bill Pierce at wpie@apcoworldwide.com. The session will be recorded and we'll share a link on the platforms afterward. Panel and hosts, for anyone who's not speaking, please do keep your mic on mute. If you can benefit from closed captions, you can also turn those on. If you, again, move your cursor around at the far right, there's 3 dots that say more underneath them. If you click that, you can click on captions and it will turn them on. Ellen, how would you be open to getting us started off today? Please take it away.
Sure. I'm Ellen Lee, and I live with a spinal cord disorder, serious illnesses, and use a power wheelchair. So I know how society discriminates against disabled, ill, and older people. The judgments about our quality of life and how this devaluation leads to medical bias and discrimination in healthcare. I know that ableism and ageism kill. I'm terrified of the End of Life Options Act due to the inevitable abuse and harm. We need to be realistic about the dangers. We live in the real world where there won't be oversight and where people will get hurt. I had a very scary experience when I was in septic shock. In the ER, where my wheelchair loomed large, the doctor told me I was very ill and might die. I then felt pressure to get a DNR. As sick as I was shocked. I had an infection. I didn't want to die. I wanted life-saving treatment. And though physically weak, I asserted my desire for that support. What if I hadn't been able to counter this attitude that my life was not worth living or saving? Assisted suicide harms the doctor-patient relationship. Altering the nature of this relationship and the role of the medical profession is a big deal. And as such, this is not something that will affect only a small number of people. It will affect all of us. I need to trust my doctor, to trust in the relationship and know that they'll provide care, not assist in killing me. In a profit-driven, broken, and overwhelmed system already rife with health disparities and biases, we don't need more mistrust by adding lethal drugs as a medical treatment. We need to ensure health equity, improving care for patients throughout life and at the end of life. Let's focus on high-quality hospice and palliative care, as well as support services and fully funded home care, so that death isn't chosen due to a lack of options. As a disabled person, I need protection. I am vulnerable. Being disabled, having a chronic health condition, using a wheelchair, being older, all of these things make all of us much more vulnerable. And we must not be made to feel like a burden. People who feel this pressure may end their life prematurely. It is a socially dangerous policy to make people question their dignity or whether their lives are worth living. We all deserve care, not a hastened death. Being progressive means caring for the most vulnerable, not ending their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Much appreciate your perspective on this. Stephanie.
Good morning. I'm Stephanie Aguayo-Packer, a Latina mother of 7 from California. In 2012, I was diagnosed with scleroderma and given 3 years to live. As you can see, I've outlived that prognosis, and I'm relieved that I'm alive to care for my children. Shortly after California passed its law to legalize assisted suicide, my doctors prescribed an expensive new treatment. When I asked my insurance company about coverage of the treatment, my request was denied. I asked if they would cover a lethal dose of drugs under the new assisted suicide law and was told that they would for a copay of a mere $1.20. I was stunned that much cheaper lethal drugs would be available to me rather than treatment to save my life. Fortunately, I eventually received coverage for the treatment that I sought. To reinforce California's interest in saving money by legalizing assisted suicide, the fiscal note attached to the proposed California law predicted potential minor costs and savings in Medi-Cal based on the Medi-Cal program choosing to cover this end-of-life option. You see, California was predicting that they would save money by covering lethal drugs instead of treatments. My health journey has not been easy. I've been in and out of hospice for 6 years, with predictions that I only had 6 months or less to live. Each time I qualified for lethal drugs and lived in fear that with my next prognosis, treatment would be denied in favor of cheaper lethal drugs. My children need me, and as long as I can bear the treatment offered, I want to live. My situation has improved so much that I recently married and I now have a job. Please don't place mothers and other people in Massachusetts in the position I found myself in, where months or years of life could have been denied. Legislators must vote against S1331 and H2246. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. That's so powerful. I'm sorry you had to go through all that and have that pressure put on you by your insurer and the system and the public policy itself. Before I ask Jackie to tell her story, I'd just like to remind everybody that this is a difficult topic for some. So we want to remind everyone that thoughts or actions even in young children, older adults, and people with life-threatening illness and disability, are a sign of extreme distress and should not be ignored. If you or someone you know needs immediate help, please call or text the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 988. Jackie, please tell your story if you're ready.
Good afternoon. My name is Jackie Bieber. My daughter Sean ended her life by suicide on May 22nd, 2019. Few life events are as devastating as losing a child, made even more traumatic when the death is self-inflicted. What makes her death especially painful is that her suicide was accomplished using a drug cocktail published and promoted by proponents of assisted suicide. So societal efforts to downplay suicide add another layer of encouragement to people like Sean, who became an unfortunate victim. It needs to stop. Sean's path to suicide didn't happen overnight. An intelligent child who wanted to be a scientist. She suffered from severe depression and social anxiety for many years. Her promising potential career took a nosedive when she dropped out of college and took jobs that fed her depression and anxiety, jobs where she felt stupid and couldn't talk to people. Ongoing treatment for her condition met with little success. She appeared to be getting better, but in late March and April of 2019, her condition declined. She spent hours in her bedroom and, without my ever knowing or suspecting it, began visiting websites that talked about suicide, where she was an active participant in the chat room. Although the website features numerous statements that it does not sanction or encourage suicide, the chat room tells a different story. Sean learned how to order sodium nitrite, SN, on the site and other drugs that led to her death. One of the resources listed is the Peaceful Pill Handbook, which advocates for assisted suicide and euthanasia, and that is the means she chose. The resource title is enticing for those with mental pain as they seek some semblance of peace. At 11:00 a.m. on May 22nd, Sean was actively talking to website participants when she took the drugs. They told her good luck and encouraged her when she said she was terrified. At 4:30 p.m., I went into her bedroom and she was dead. Powerful and well-funded groups promote assisted suicide, which they say is for terminally ill patients who are suffering. But participants on the suicide website find it persuasive to link mental suffering to physical suffering and logically conclude that a peaceful death should be available to both. As a society, and for the sake of my daughter Sean and others like her, our message should be consistent and of one voice. Suicide should not be promoted for anyone who has terminal or mental illness, and the means to accomplish it should not be so public. It impacts far too many and accelerates the growing suicide rate. Thank you.
Jackie, thank you so much for sharing. I'm always just so touched by your story, and it's so heartbreaking. I'm sorry for your loss, and my sincere condolences still, because I'm sure that it's not easy every single day. Lynette, would you please share your personal story?
Yes, I offer my condolences also. And good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Lynette Grandy. I'm a resident in Connecticut, your neighbor to the south. I'm a retired educator. My story begins in 1993 when I was diagnosed with stage 4 adenocarcinoma, more familiarly known as stomach cancer. Subsequently, a gastroenterologist gave me a 10% chance to survive. Immediate surgery followed the diagnosis, followed by chemotherapy and 6 weeks of daily radiation. I quickly went from 125 to 95 pounds, subsisting on broth and jello. Diminished, damaged, and feeling as though I was sitting at the bottom of the deepest pit, I decided to end the treatments. My husband was told I had 3 months to live and should get things in order. In 1993, my 2 children were 11 and 9, and the thought of leaving them, my husband, and the rest of my extended circle of family, friends, and students was foremost in my mind. I didn't want to die. A sadness so profound followed and overshadowed all else. My body was wasting. Concerns were too many to address, and waning energy on all levels gave no indication I could be restored. I held on and found solace in the kindness and love of others who supported me. Even while I believed in those moments at the bottom of a pit, there was no way up and out. Then a miracle occurred in the form of a business envelope with a brochure that read Cancer and Energy Healing. The brochure's message spoke of a non-invasive protocol to rebalance energy in my body. I called the number on the brochure and gave the option a shot. After just one treatment, I experienced vastly improved strength, stamina, appetite, and was on my way to what is currently a 30th bonus year of life. I think about the number of lives needlessly lost to assisted suicide who didn't hold on, who didn't have a loving family or a circle of support to remind them that every day brings new hope and that every single opportunity to live should be taken. My life, 30 years after my terminal diagnosis, moves me to grieve for those who might have lived so much longer and fully than they thought or knew possible. Abuse, coercion, and error was as prevalent then as it is now when it comes to incorrect diagnoses and the bias to steer people living lives with disability towards assisted suicide. Please consider and remember me, a Black female, mother of a special needs adult son, and now a senior citizen, left alive to advocate for and influence those who recognize and value the gift of life and rebuke assisted suicide as an option. I urge you, the lawmakers of Massachusetts, to oppose House Bill 2246 and Senate Bill 1331 and fight to lift society's most vulnerable up.
Wow, Lynette, that's I'm just so happy you're alive. It's beautiful. And we never can know. I mean, I think all of us know somebody who's outlived a pretty grim prognosis that was given to them by doctors, because it's really a best guess scenario. And even doctors will tell you that they're not that good at prognostication, especially to show that at 6 months or less, those prognoses are more often wrong than they are right. I just want to offer to everybody who's attending, if you would like to, again, the Q&A function, if you move your cursor, the toolbar will appear at the bottom. You can click on Q&A and ask your questions through that. I'll give folks a minute or two to formulate any questions they might have before we close out. And as you're doing that, I also want to just offer to people that, you know, where assisted suicide is legal, you create a two-tiered system of medicine. Having a 6 month or less prognosis, even if it were accurate, is just saying that somebody has a life-threatening disability. Those be terminal, as most people understand that word, such that that person will ultimately meet their demise through that illness. To know that it's 6 months for sure is unlikely at best, but so many are also attaining a 6 month or less prognosis by either exercising their right as a patient to forego care, which we do not oppose, but in order to qualify themselves for lethal drugs. And so you end up with people from legal states listing as the underlying condition things like HIV, diabetes, anorexia, arthritis, complications from a fall, a hernia. Since when are anorexia, arthritis, and a hernia life-threatening illnesses. Everybody always thinks this is people in stage 4 metastatic cancer, inoperable. They're going to die in the next couple of weeks in excruciating pain unless you provide this thing to them. And to which I take nothing away from the fact that people are dying poorly in this country and in this state where I live. I care about that. I go to their homes and about hospice care. But so many of them don't even know what hospice is, may not have access to it. We need to promote the things that are going to give people peace of mind at the end of life, while at the same time not putting a great number of people in deadly harm. When you have a situation in which young people with anorexia are being written lethal scripts in legal states like Colorado, you have to ask yourself the question, is this public policy that where the tough cases are making bad law? When you have a public policy that doesn't take into consideration the great number of people that could be harmed by it, it's bad public policy. We have to look at the vulnerable people that this could hurt, who could be coerced behind closed doors, and against whom our societal latent discrimination is being inflicted upon. So with that, I don't see any questions. Do any of you panelists have anything else to offer or add before we close out the session? Okay. Well, thank you.
I'm sorry. Do you have a minute?
No, please, Lynette. Go
I
ahead.
would just like to add that there are messages, subliminal and overt, that come at people throughout life. And all of us are in those situations on a continual basis. To me, there was something that happened when I first was diagnosed. I knew I had to notify the people who were really responsible for my career, which was education, to provide for the children that were going to be separated from me because of this illness and the treatments that were recommended. And almost the first thing out of the gentleman's mouth when I spoke with him, he was the principal of the school I was working at the time. And I told him what happened and that I had a 10% chance to survive. And his words could never have been more wonderfully spoken when he said to me, "You know you're the 10%, don't you?" And to this day, when I tell people that, we forget how powerful our words to other people are. There's so many times when people have these horrifying situations in life. And to just remember that as a culture, we need to start speaking life into people. I think there's such an overcast message of death in this nation, in our nation, that really has to be transformed into messages of life. And this is a wonderful platform for the media to get involved with, reminding people we all have the power to speak life into each other, and that needs to happen.
And to show people with both our thoughts, our actions, and our public policy that we are not going to devalue anybody, that everyone has an equal shot at suicide prevention care and services. I mean, if in a medical setting, if I go to somebody's home on a medical call where they have threatened or have attempted suicide, there's a standard of care for harm and suicide prevention care and services for anyone who expresses such a desire in a medical setting, except if you have assisted suicide legal state, where now all of a sudden, if that person happens to have, in the physicians or these other medical professionals' estimation, a 6-month or less prognosis, now they not only don't get the standard of care, that medical professional is no longer under the same liability protections for those vulnerable people that they would otherwise be. So that person who happens to have a life-threatening disability, based on their disability, is no longer receiving those same protections as everybody else. And that's pretty real, present discrimination right in our society. I mean, There's a Harvard study not too long ago released by Lisa Iazoni, a medical doctor with this. Asked for medical professionals their view of people with disabilities, and over 80% of doctors did not consider a life with a disability as worth living as a non-disabled life. This is the society in which we live in. This is the medical system in which we have to operate and have to submit ourselves to. You add assisted suicide law to that milieu, and all of a sudden, you're putting a great number of people at risk of both deadly harm and discrimination.
May I just add something? I'm not sure where I
Yes.
read this.
Have a minute or two, so just so you know the time.
I'm not sure where I heard this, but it seems to make sense to me as an educator and just really living in the world, that 1 in 3 people can be considered special needs in these times. And that's an awful lot of people to be really discarding when we think about that this could become the standard for medical care in our world, in our nation. That if you have something and someone says you have a very limited time to live with it, and all of a sudden we're just discarding people. It just is frightening, and I think inhumane on every level. And I just think it's discriminatory, as you said, and I don't know why anyone in the lawmaking profession would be interested in promoting anything of this nature.
Thank you all so much, panelists. Just in the minute we have left, Ellen, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was
You're at
just
the
going to say,
ready.
yeah, that's okay. No,
Please close
just
us out.
hearing everyone's powerful story speaks volumes. Doctors have tremendous power and are tremendously influential to people. So if they have the authority to offer lethal prescriptions, a patient, and by nature, all of us are vulnerable as patients, but some of us more so, especially people with disabilities or, serious illnesses, we may take that suggestion, especially if we don't have a lot of other resources. We're made to feel like a burden by society. We're being told that we don't have dignity if we need care. That we should question whether we should even be alive, and we are to be treated in a healthcare system that has these biases. How many people will make this false choice if given this option by our doctors? I just am concerned about so many lives that will be ended prematurely.
Yeah. And so many who, with disability, without the proper long-term services and supports, all of a sudden qualify for those lethal drugs under such a statute as the one proposed here. So everyone, I'd like to thank our panelists today for joining us and being courageous enough to tell these very personal, very powerful stories. All of you from the press, thank you so much for joining us as well. Some of us will be in person at the State House tomorrow if you'd like a direct interview. And this press conference, again, has been recorded and can be circulated to you. Hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much.